Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this extremely easy mica and glitter ombre tumbler. As always, I'll make sure to put everything that I use today down in the description box so you can shop those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. So today I am using a 30-ounce, just regular type curved tumbler. I went ahead and I prepped and I primed that the night before. I primed it with the Champagnie Mist. I thought it would go really well with the rose gold glitter that I will be using. Now I am using a chunky glitter today, and I have 5 milliliters of epoxy mixed up here, and I want to use my epoxy to adhere my glitter down to my tumbler. So I'm going to put all 5 milliliters of this epoxy onto my tumbler, and that's really going to make sure that those chunky glitters have enough room to shift around and lay completely flat for us. And of course, if I was also using a fine glitter, I would not use this much epoxy. I'm only using this much because I am using just a chunky glitter today. Now that our tumbler is nice and coated with our epoxy, we're going to go ahead and start applying the glitter. The glitter that I'm using today is this beautiful holographic and opal rose gold color. This is called Rosanna, and you can get that at socglitters.com if you would like to. If not, just use your favorite rose gold you already have on hand. So on top of making sure that I applied a little bit more epoxy than usual because I'm using a chunky, I also like to sprinkle on my chunky glitters. I just feel like I have a little bit more control over the amount of glitter that gets applied to it, so that way I know that all those chunky glitters have enough room to lay flat for me. So after I get my bottom all done, then I just start the process of just letting that glitter cascade down the tumbler. As you see, I just kind of go around in a line. I turn my tumbler and let it go around in a line and just let those glitters cascade down. Now I don't want this to go all the way up to the rim. That's just going to help us out too in the process of coating it with the glitter and sanding and all that, but there's no need for it to go all the way up to the rim. But your micas, once we go to do that coat over top, you will be able to see it just a little bit through the mica, depending on how much mica powder you put into your epoxy. So, you know, if you want to fully fill it up with the glitter, you can, or if you just want to have that ombre effect underneath the mica powders like I'm doing here, either way is perfectly fine. All right, now that that is on, I'm going to go ahead and come in with just a little bit of a filler. This is kind of like a medium chunky. This is called Rose Opal, and I'm just going to fill in all those little spaces that might not have got filled in and just make sure it's nice and sparkly and pretty for me. All right, once you have your filler on, now you're just going to want to take your opposite hand. That's why I keep it gloved. And we're just going to come through and pat down any glitters that might be kind of poking up. But again, there's really not much to tap down. It's pretty smooth for us already. So now the next step we're going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and put it onto my turner, because I did apply just a little bit more epoxy than usual, and I don't want it to kind of slip around on me. So I'm going to put that on my turner. I'm going to let that cure for a couple hours, and then we're ready to add that flood coat over the top of our raw glitter. Okay, my epoxy is cured and we're ready to add that flood coat. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and sweep off any loose glitters, and then I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to make sure that I spray it down pretty good with my semi-gloss clear here. That's just really going to help out make sure that our epoxy has something to grip onto, because sometimes these chunkier glitters, especially the metallic ones, make the epoxy want to kind of wick away or slide off of it. So that just kind of helps out that process. So here now I'm going to apply 30 milliliters of epoxy over top of my raw glitter here. I'm going to make sure that I hit this up really good with my torch. I'm going to put that on my turner and I'm going to let that cure overnight. All right, so before we move on to the next step, our tumbler is nice and cured, and we're going to go ahead and clean up that rim. We're going to give it a very light sanding. I'm just going to make sure that I hit up that rim really good, and I'm just going to come around and very lightly knock down any glitters that are kind of poking up through my epoxy, just very lightly, nothing too crazy. You don't want to sand it too hard because you run the risk of possibly ruining the glitter underneath, because there is such a small amount of epoxy over top of it so far. So just a very light sanding, just to kind of knock anything down. Make sure you clean it off really good with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel, and then we're ready to move on to that next step. All right, so let's get started on that Mica Ombre look that we're doing here. So I have 30 milliliters of epoxy in my cup here. I'm going to get that stirred up really well. And after I get that stirred up, I'm going to take another little medicine cup here, and I'm going to divvy up my epoxy. So I'm going to do half and half, so that way one half can be for the mica mixture and the other half can be for our clear portion. Now the mica powder that I'm using today, I just got off Amazon. It was just this really pretty rose gold, there we go, not opal, rose gold color. I thought it would go really well with my colors here. I just wanted a really nice monochromatic, you know, rose gold on rose gold look. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little scoopful of that mica powder right into one portion of that epoxy and get that mixed up really well. Now, when I go to start applying my epoxy, I'm going to start with the clear first. So I'm just going to take that epoxy and just kind of go halfway up, almost like we did with the glitter. Just kind of follow that, you know, just make sure you smooth it out really good. If you're doing your bottoms, make sure you smooth out your bottom really well and just bring that clear epoxy right up to about to where you left off with your glitter. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the mica portion of this ombre. After I get this nice and smoothed out, I just wanna make sure that that bottom's nice and smooth. It's very important. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take my mica epoxy mixture and I'm just going to start smoothing that around. Again, just kind of bringing it down about where that glitter is ombre to. So right above that, or right below that paint line, I'm just going to kind of smooth it out and make sure that it looks nice and even. Because you know, sometimes mica powders, you know, depending on how you swirl it and stuff, it'll get kind of that swirl motion to it. So if you want yours more of like a smooth look, you don't want to play around with it too much, especially if you're using a quick coat epoxy or anything like that. You just want to make sure that you get it nice and smoothed on. Now after I get it all applied, all completely around, I'm just going to take my finger and just very lightly drag that mica epoxy mixture back down into the clear. Just very lightly, just making sure that I just slightly drag that color because I don't want it to make any thin spots at the top. I just want to make sure that it's just nice and smoothed out for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and place it onto my turner. Now, after I get it onto my turner, all you want to do is take your gloved finger and you just want to kind of swirl that clear up into the mica portion. It's so extremely easy. And I know you guys got this. That's all I did to kind of blend everything together to give us that mica and glitter ombre. Now, after this has cured, if you notice that the top portion just doesn't look the way you want it to, it is completely fine to come through and do this one more time. You don't need to use 30 milliliters the next time around. You don't need to use that much, maybe 20, so 10 milliliters of the mica portion, 10 of the clear, so you don't get such a thick coating of epoxy on your tumbler, but it's okay to do it again if you need to kind of fill in any voids that might have happened at the top. So I'm just gonna make sure that I hit this up really good with my torch, so that way everything kind of settles back down and kind of shifts just a little bit more for me. I'm gonna go ahead and let that cure, and she is ready to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.